Hello and welcome to another episode of Osgoode Community Chronicles, where we explore the rich history, vibrant events, and remarkable stories that make up the Osgoode Ward and surrounding communities. In each episode, we dive deep into our local heritage, drawing from the meticulous records and research of our local historians and families. These invaluable resources allow us to bring you stories from the past, ensuring that the traditions that shaped our community are shared with future generations. Whether you're a lifelong resident like me, or a newcomer, join us as we tie our fascinating history to the present-day version of our beloved region of Osgoode and surrounding communities. I'm your host, Tracy Daviero. Still getting memories coming in from the ice storm episode, which was a couple of weeks ago. And of course, we are in a deep freeze here now, at least for this week, so people are talking about that as well. As always, I thank you for your comments and stories that you share with me about the podcast and the episodes that you listen to. Do share it with others as well, as it helps our audience grow. In today's episode, we will have our news and events calendar as usual. Our business and historical segments are combined today as we talk about the origins of Osgoode Township and sort of the Snake Island Road area. Our Community Voices segment comes from Hilda, Richmond, and we'll finish up with our mental health moment, which is 6 brief stories full of meaning. Let's get into it. Every week on the podcast, we'll share some of the local events that are taking place in our area. So many great people doing great things. Please do be sure that you get out to support them. Little bit of news. The Kemptville Youth Centre is celebrating the receipt of a $4,500 grant from Canadian Tire Jumpstart program that will promote active recreation activities for youth 11 to 19. That is awesome news. Congratulations on that. And here are our events for this week. On January 23rd, that's this week, French Conversation Group starts at Metcalfe Library. It's 6:30 p.m. every second Thursday, and it's a drop-in where you can practice your French conversation skills. The other dates are February 6th and 20th and March 6th and 20th. And this weekend comes Robbie Burns night at the Kemptville Legion on January 24th. That is Friday night. The Kemptville Legion Pipe and Drum and dancers from the Andrea Gorel School of Highland Dancing will perform at 6:30, followed by the presentation of the haggis. $50 for your ticket includes dinner. On the 24th is Metcalfe Golf and Country Club's Winter Buffet. They're doing a 4-course dinner with your choice of Korean dry spiced pork tenderloin, garlic butter shrimp skewers, or roast beef au jus for $47 per person. And on the 25th is when the Manotick Legion is doing their Robbie Burns dinner and dance. This is a 3-course meal with haggis, of course, and it's $35. You can get your tickets in advance. Remember, there are limited tickets available for that. Also on Saturday night, Cheryl Cooper, Jamie Hodges, and Natalie Curry are hosting a fundraiser for the Metcalfe Jets. It's the MDHA Trivia Night in Metcalfe. $25 per person, or you can reserve a table of 8. A Killing in Kemptville is also taking place on Saturday night. Busy weekend. It's a murder mystery dinner theater in Kemptville, which sounds so much fun. It is a fundraiser for the House of Lazarus and the Kemptville Hub, hosted by North Grenville Community Theatre Group, and it's taking place at St. John's Church. It starts with a chili tasting competition and silent auction, and then the mystery begins. Tickets for that are $50 per person. Also on Saturday, the Robert Plant second annual Winter Market on Navan Road. There are over 75 vendors. It's a pet-friendly event inside the greenhouses from 9 to 4. They'll also have food and coffee trucks, knife and tool sharpening, and tarot card reading. Check it out. It's their second annual. And on January 28th, Happy Little Farmstead is hosting a hands-on farm adventure for homeschooled children ages 4 to 10. I believe they're in Spencerville. Cost is $15 per child, and the adventure starts at 10 a.m. The kids will learn about farm animals in the winter. They'll do a winter walk scavenger hunt, weather permitting. Hot chocolate is provided for your lunch. Bring your own lunch, though. Wintercraft in the afternoon, and free play and or meet more animals in the afternoon. The day runs from 10 until 2, and space is limited. And on the 29th, Osgoode Outreach, along with iSisters, starts their first series of basic computer skills workshops for seniors. They're going to cover over 6 weeks basic computer troubleshooting, effective use of email and the internet, online safety and security, social media, AI basics, and more. The program runs Wednesdays at 1:30 p.m. for 6 weeks. Space is limited. And the first winter carnival coming upon us is the Greeley Winter Carnival from January 30th to February 2nd. Has a full calendar of activities, including charity bingo, a kids' glow dance, the firefighters' pancake breakfast, magic show, outdoor activities, sleigh rides, an absolute comedy show for the adults, and Greeley Lions Club brunch, and more. And that is our events calendar for this week. This week's business spotlight and historical spotlight are combined. I want to tell 3 stories that are sort of centered around the Snake Island area, and they sort of both fall into business and historical, so I'm combining it all. The very first one is from Plain Living in Osgoode Township, a short history of the township of Osgoode. And this comes from the Glimpses of Osgoode Township, 100 Years of History book that was published in 1977. In 1791, Canada was divided into Upper and Lower Canada, and John Graves Simcoe, called the Father of Upper Canada, was the first lieutenant governor. The first Executive Council meeting was held in Kingston on the 3rd of July, 1792, and one of its members, the Honourable William Osgoode, Chief Justice of Upper Canada, was the man whose name was later given to the township of Osgoode. Osgoode Township was surveyed in at least 3 stages. Some before 1795, when there was a request for land along the Rideau, some after the 5th of October, 1796, when an act was passed to complete as much as remains in Osgoode, Wolford, etc., and the remaining part after 1822, when an advertisement was put in the Upper Canada Gazette that sealed proposals would be received for the completion of the survey of several townships in the Johnstown district. The survey was to be paid for in land, a percentage of the land surveyed, after 1/7 was taken out for the Crown and 1/7 for the clergy reserves. The patent would be given without fee and no settlement duty would be required. In the years from 1799 to 1827, numerous grants of land in the township were made by the Crown, according to the Ontario Provincial Government Index to Land Patents. Most of this was given out to sons and daughters of United Empire Loyalists. Some was in recognition of military services, and some was to new settlers. Few of the names appearing on the index were listed in the 1842 census of Osgoode Township. Thus, it would seem that many did not become permanent settlers, but sold their holdings. Archibald Macdonnell, according to the inscription on his tombstone in St. Catherine's Cemetery in Metcalfe, was the first settler to come into Osgoode with his family in March 1827. The tombstone of William York in the Methodist Cemetery in Metcalfe states that he was the first settler in the township. The 1842 census shows a population of 1,279 for Osgoode Township. By 1861, this figure had increased to 4,332, and in 1871, there were 4,267 persons living in the township. In the next 100 years, this figure had risen to 7,757, and the latest figure, remember this is from a 1977 book, is 8,957 in 1976. The H. Belden and Company Historical Atlas of Carleton County stated that the township of Osgoode, judged by its extent, coupled with its chances of development within the next decade, as compared with that development in its own case and the cases of the other municipalities in the county for the past 10 years, Osgoode may fairly be considered a leading township. Belden went on to say that in extent it is the greatest, containing by actual measurement 90,894 acres of land, being 7,321 acres more than Gloucester, the second in size, and nearly 4 times the area of Torbolton, the smallest. While in wealth and population, it is third, being behind Nepean and Gloucester in both, though following Gloucester very closely in the former. The value of real property being $1,135,806, which exceeds Gloucester by only $369,000, although the population is only as 1 to 2.12, being 3,685 in Osgoode and 7,815 in Gloucester. As compared with Nepean, the wealth and population of each bear nearly the same ratio to each other, each being a trifle less than double in Nepean what it is in Osgoode. It is interesting to note that the gravestone of William and Anne York reads, "In memory of the first settlers in the township of Osgoode." The same claim is made on the gravestone of Colonel Archibald Macdonnell. Research has shown that both families set out from Cornwall, Ontario on the same day in 1827, and both had the goal of settling on their new granted land in the wilderness township of Osgoode. The gravestone of Colonel Archibald Macdonnell has the added inscription, "He was the first with his family led into the wilderness of Osgoode in March 1827. When the Yorks and the Macdonnells arrived at their land grants in the early spring of 1837, they found dense forests of pines and hardwoods. Their first task was to set up camp in tents and then clear a few trees and construct a very basic shelter out of the felled logs. After the construction of their first log home, they proceeded with clearing the land. All the trees had to be cut down and limbed by hand using axes. The settlers would likely have had a team of horses or oxen to move the large timbers about. Much of the felled wood was burned as there was an overabundance of it. The ash would then be saved and used to fertilize the land once it was cleared to the point where a crop could be planted. When enough land was cleared, the earth would be broken up using fairly crude tools. Care had to be taken to work around the remaining tree stumps, which may not be removed for some time. In some cases, the settler would craft a crude plow, such as the stump jumper plow. Many of the first settlers used this type of plow to break up their rough land. They had not been able to remove all the stumps and so had to work around them. The plow was homemade out of a yoke from a felled tree. It was pulled by a slow-moving team of oxen, which gave the farmer time to lift the plow out of the ground as they approached the many stumps and roots that had not yet been cleared. The settlers could then begin sowing their first crop, usually wheat, oats, or barley. This was done by hand, scattering the seed in a wide swath and hoping the birds would not eat too much of it. As fall approached and the grain turned to golden yellow, the settler would then reap the grain using a cradle. The grain would then be tied into sheaves for storing and then later thrashed by hand using a flail. In 1835, there were very few roads in eastern Ontario. Many of these were seasonal routes. In some cases, the Castor River and Nation River were used as winter roads for travel once they froze over. The Belden Atlas included some highly complimentary sketches of farms, businesses, and people who were patrons of the atlas. Not all patrons subscribed at a high enough level to have illustrations included in the atlas. The 1879 Belden Atlas says that after Squire Macdonnell had got onto his location, and before he had hardly got comfortably settled, he discovered that William York had settled on Lot 21, Concession 9, the same day he had come to Lot 25, Concession 8. What is very singular about it is the fact that they were both old neighbors in Cornwall, that neither knew the other had any intention of moving, that they had both started from Cornwall from the same destination but by different routes, with their families on the same day, and that they both arrived at that destination on the same day, each thinking himself the only settler in the township for some time, till each accidentally discovered the presence of the other. These two continued to be the only settlers in Osgoode until the next winter, 1827-1828, when Richard Hall and Samuel Loney came in with their families and settled, the former on Lot 19, Concession 9, and the latter on Lot 18 in Concession 9. They had both spent part of the previous winter, 1826 and 27, clearing small patches and erecting shanties, and making general preparations for a permanent removal next season. No more came in till 1829. Robert Grant, who settled on Lot 24, Concession 10, was the first of these. Between his advent and 1832, 3 years later, the only other settlers who located permanently were Peter McLaren, who settled at Kenmore, the pioneer of that locality, Squire Hannah, and Donald McIntosh, ex-sergeant of Royal Artillery, who settled on the east and west halves, respectively, of Lot 23, Concession 7. The two Cassidy brothers, John McNabb, Duncan Cameron, Colin Campbell, Dennis Kearns, Henry Brown, John Farlinger, and Thomas Bailey. About the latter date, one Harris and one Hurd had located on the Rideau, opposite to the Garlic settlement, one of the oldest in North Gore, and some distance upriver from the new Union Bridge at Wellington, which is Carbs. During the season of 1832, the Rideau Canal was completed, and the number of settlers then commenced to increase, and from that date steadily continued to arrive in large numbers, and over such scattered areas that it would have been quite a matter of difficulty to keep track of them as to time and place, even then. And now, when nearly half a century has passed and most of those who were cognizant of events then passing have gone the way of life, while those remaining cannot be expected to be full of the memory of what were then the commonest details of everyday existence, though at this distance of time many such would be of interest to their descendants, it becomes a matter of impossibility to trace the various stages of settlement in their properly recurring succession. Nor does this seem necessary, as what records have been preserved are sufficient to show who were the men to take part in the governing affairs of the community from year to year, while the everyday life of, although not perhaps marked by any peculiarly or particularly exceptional incidents, was still replete with all of those experience and primitive sorrows and sufferings, brightened by occasional periods of rude joys, and tempered by an apparent ignorance, the result of constant inurement to trials which hardened their nature and brought home the force of the old saw that in certain cases wisdom may be folly. On July 28, 2001, a provincial historical plaque commemorating the founding of Osgoode Township was unveiled at Vernon, Ontario, as part of the 25th Annual Pioneer Day. In addition to the plaque unveiling, 2 local markers were also unveiled to honor the founding families of the Macdonells and the Yorks. The plaque reads, "Named for William Osgoode, the first Chief Justice of Upper Canada, Osgoode Township was established on lands the British acquired from the Mississaugas in the 1780s. Land for farming and a plentiful supply of white pine and white oak attracted the first non-native settlers, the families of Archibald and Catherine Macdonell and William and Anne York, who first arrived in 1827. They founded the new community's first industries and institutions, and they built the first 2 roads in the township, converging here at what was Baker's Corners. These roads, the Rideau Canal and railway lines between Osgoode and Bytown, now Ottawa, encouraged further settlement, and the township was incorporated in 1850. On January 1st, 2001, Osgoode Township became a part of the City of Ottawa." And there you have that. The second reading is from the One Room Schoolhouse collection about SS No. 14 Osgoode, Snake Island School. In 1876, Patrick Herbert donated land for a school, and a log building was erected with 2 windows on each side. The teachers were of Irish Catholic descent, but no religion was taught because this was a public school and some of the pupils were Protestants. Children from Francophone families attended around 1918, until 3 Protestant ratepayers of the original first settlement objected to the fact that the French Catholics wanted the rosary said and the catechism taught in the school. The Francophone children were then forced to attend school in a private house situated on Lot 18, Concession 4, beside Grey Creek. Eventually, they compromised, and the Catholic students stayed in at noon to say the rosary, and they remained after 3 p.m. for religion. In the early 1920s, the French ratepayers bought the school and the land from the public school board. The school then became a French Catholic bilingual school called RCSS No. 14 Osgoode, and for many years there were as many as 50 students in attendance. In 1966, the school closed after 90 years, and students attended St. Catherine's in Metcalfe. And the third is What's in a Name? Snake Island by Mike Daly. The name Snake Island School or Center is a befitting tribute, a commemorative plaque to the pioneer families, and a continuity with the past history of Osgoode Township. It is hoped that this brief documentary of facts and events and personalities will arouse interest and pride in the hearts of this generation and of those to follow, and that it will stimulate a consciousness of our early history. The drama of struggle, sadness, joy, and pride encompassing the lives of the newly arrived settlers and pioneers staggers the imagination. One realizes these early immigrants from Ireland were a hardy folk, and hardy they had to be. They knew the realities of suffering, hunger, and illness, and even death. Along with other pioneers, they helped to open up this township and give us the safe and happy environment in which we live. Our own descendants can live in peace and freedom because people of strength and courage took a chance on a new land. They followed their dream, and in so doing helped to make our dream come true. Archibald Macdonell, according to the inscription on his tombstone in St. Catherine's Cemetery in Metcalfe, was the first settler to come into Osgoode with his family in 1827 and 1828. The tombstone of William York in the Methodist Cemetery in Metcalfe states that he was the first settler in the township. The 1842 census shows a population of 1,279 inhabitants. By 1861, this figure had increased to over 4,000, and by 1863 there were 5 Irish families settled on lots in what became known as Snake Island. This name was given because of the large population of snakes of various sizes, some measuring 5 feet in length and 12 inches in circumference. Strange to say, the Irish had not been long in the area before the snakes took their departure. In Concession 4, there were D. O'Connor, Lot 20, T. Devereaux, Lot 21, J. Mantle, Lot 22. In Concession 5, there were Thomas Kangley, Lot 22, Reverend Thomas Boyle and his family, Lot 20, also William Otto and J. Bradley in Lot 19. By 1879, the population of Snake Island had increased considerably with names such as Minogue, Coleman, Dooley, Herbert, Leahy, McMahon, Brennan, Keogh, Tobin, Shea, McAvoy, and McCabe, all from Ireland. 2 other families also settled here, the Gray and Duncan families. The area was covered with water and wild grasses and marshy hay. In the 1860s, a tragedy struck Snake Island. A story is told of a poor family living in the settlement by the name of John and Sally. No last name. They kept a cow. John, knowing that winter was coming on and not wanting the cow to go hungry, decided to cut some of the marsh hay for feed for this cow over the winter. He sharpened his scythe, got his lunch old clay pipe and tobacco, and off he went to the meadow. He looked over the field and picked out the best spot, as he thought, and set to work. He had not been long mowing when one of those big black snakes bit him on the leg. Luckily, there was a man passing by who came to his aid and bound up his wounds, but John died of the snake bite. There were some verses gotten up about this fatality, but I will not include them here. My great-grandmother, Mary Downs Leahy, from County Down, Ireland, told that when they settled in the island in Lot 24, Concession 4, in 1845, they used to light pine torches to drive the wildcats from the roof of their log cabin. In 1867, Patrick Herbert, son of my great-great-grandparents Patrick and Bridget Herbert, who lived at Lot 15, Concession 3, received from his father the deed for the west half of Lot 23, Concession 5, 100 acres in Snake Island. On July 10, 1876, Patrick Jr. and his wife Anne McKay donated 1 acre of land on the northwest corner of Lot 23, Concession 5, for $1 to the trustee of School Section Number 14 for the erection of a new English public school. The agreement was signed by John Tobin, John Coleman, and Patrick McCabe in the presence of Thomas Devereaux. The building was erected of logs, approximately 22 by 26 feet in dimensions, with 2 windows on each side. In later years, an addition was made to the school, making it approximately 40 feet in length. This building is now a residential home, but still retains the image of its past. No religion was taught in this school because some of the students were Protestant, despite the fact that the teachers were Irish Roman Catholics by descent and could teach religion. Children were instructed in their homes in their religious persuasion. Around 1918, 19 French families from Embrun, St. Therese, Sarsfield, and Rockland came into the area and bought up the farms that the Irish families had spent a lifetime clearing and draining. Mr. Joseph Dow was one of the first, with a family of 8 boys and 4 girls. He was followed by other French families until there was only one Irish family left, John Devereaux. Today, his son Frank and family still reside on the homestead that was carved out of the wilderness of Osgoode. In the early 1920s, the French ratepayers bought the school and land from the Public School Board. It then became RCSS number 14, and for many years, as many as 50 students were in attendance. In 1960, St. Catherine's School in Metcalfe was built, and in 1966, RCSS number 14 School Board was dissolved when a majority of French ratepayers and tenants voted to support St. Catherine's English Catholic School and to have their children educated there. For 90 years, this little schoolhouse served the needs of the community, but like the closing of a book, the era of the one-room schoolhouse in Snake Island was no more. Ironic, isn't it, that once again, 110 years later, that a ratepayer, Mr. Norman Fenn of Concession 5 Lot 20, has donated a parcel of land for the erection of a building to further the education of our youth? And that would be Castor Valley School by Mike Daly. So a little bit of history of how everybody came into the area and how the schools kind of moved themselves around, and we will cover more about the Snake Island area in next week's episode. But that is our business and historical combo spotlight for this week. Today's Community Voices comes from Hilda Richmond from an older article in the Winchester Press. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with the Winchester Press archives and I lost the year of this article, but I know it's from a winter edition many years ago. And it's called A Longer Social Season by Hilda Richmond. From November to March, first used to be the social season on the farm. And if anything, like bad roads or extremely cold weather cut short the festivities and good times, no attempt was made to make up the lost time. However, there is a definite and concerted movement on the part of farmers and their families to lengthen out the social season and to carry over into the spring some of the activities of the winter. Even in the busy springtime, there are days when it is easy to get up, hasty meetings, socials, and suppers without interfering in the least with the farm work. A great deal of this is due to better planning and the more efficient working of social committees in the country. Formerly, when a social was announced, every woman took rolls, meat, pickles, spreads, cake, pie, fruit, and as many other things as she could get ready, working hard for several days. Now, all that is changed. The ladies know how many baked beans, how many scalloped oysters, how many chickens, how much coffee, how many sandwiches, and how many cakes will be needed, so less preparation all around is required. Moreover, community centers are now equipped with stoves, dishes, and utensils so that cooking is comparatively easy. Some weeks ago, a committee of men and women served a hot supper to 150 people at a cost of less than 20 cents per plate. Hot beef, gravy, mashed potatoes, dressing, tomatoes, and bread and butter were served, with fruit jelly and a small store cake for dessert. Everything was hot, good, and nicely served, and the cost was far less than what it would have taken for each family to send a chicken, bake a cake, and provide other things. But the most powerful factor in the whole thing is the fact that country people are beginning to value social joys more than they did some years back, and to realize that pleasure has a direct value in health, in finances, in keeping the children on the farm, and increasing the value of a farm property. The woman who has no share in the innocent joys of the community is the unhealthy woman, who soon tires of the farm and coaxes her husband to move to town. But the busy, cheery, happy lady who is interested in dress form meetings, cooking demonstrations, sewings, socials, church affairs, school picnics, and all the other delightful activities of the progressive country neighborhood sees no reason why she should leave the farm. Even the children are included in every form of social life and feel that the country is a good place to be. Then, beginning in August with the Chautauqua and family reunions, the good times again make their appearance. Not so frequently as in winter, of course, but still often enough to sweeten life and bring friends together to plan for the greater activities to follow. Corn roasts, harvest home festivals, auto trips, the county fair, the silo filling, the corn husking for the sick neighbor, and all the other occasions for getting together, as well as the serious meetings to consider better farming, make life pleasant, and furnish the excuse for making the good times stretch out almost the year round. It pays orally, mentally, physically, and financially to cultivate the social nature, and the farmer and his family should consider the question of entertainment intelligently and carefully from every standpoint, with a view to making life full of innocent joys that are at once pleasing and profitable to all, and that uplift the community and the nation. By Hilda Richmond. And that is our Community Voices segment for this week. In today's mental health moment, we're going to take some advice and some strength from 6 brief stories. Sadly, I don't know who the author is of this, but I was really inspired whenever I read it. And so, without the credit, we'll call them anonymous. And this is called 6 Brief Stories Full of Meaning. Number 1. Once all villagers decided to pray for rain. On the day of prayer, all the people gathered, but only one boy came with an umbrella. That is faith. Number 2. When you throw babies in the air, they laugh because they know you will catch them. That is trust. Number 3. Every night we go to bed without any assurance of being alive the next morning, but we still set alarms to wake up. That is hope. Number 4. We plan big things for tomorrow in spite of zero knowledge of the future. That is confidence. Number 5, we see the world suffering, but still we get married and have children. That is love. And number 6, on an old man's shirt was written a sentence, I'm not 80 years old, I'm sweet 16 with 64 years of experience. That is attitude. Have a happy day and live your life like these 6 stories. Remember, good friends are the rare jewels of life, difficult to find and impossible to replace. And that is this week's mental health moment. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Osgoode Community Chronicles. I hope you enjoyed our connections from the past and our taste of the present. I hope you were happy to hear about a little of the history of our township, a bit about the Snake Island area. We will dive more into that next week, as I said, and a little bit of advice on how to get you through these cold winter months that we seem to currently be in. Remember, you can catch all of our past episodes anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also listen online at osgoodecommunitychronicles.com, our website, and follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram. Don't miss next week's episode where we'll share more news and events in your area and more stories of families past and present. Thank you again for supporting our snapshot of local community. I'm Tracy Daviero, and this has been Osgoode Community Chronicles, keeping our rural spirit alive, one story at a time. I'll see you next week.